like a count of 3 before KJ starts. Once we're recording, okay, we are now recording. That helps Tim edit it. Okay, and
hey y'all, welcome back to Simple Conversations where Grace meets Strength. Hey Alice,
good morning.
how are ya?
I am so good, and I am super excited about our guest today.
I know, I'm excited. So listeners, grab something.
KJ, you're freezing. Your internet is freezing, and you're delaying a lot.
Oh my goodness. You know why? All 3 of us are on Zoom right now.
Okay.
Is it better?
It is now. But
okay.
Everything that you just said after I said our guest went to blah, 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 blah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. See, Rachel, we are newbies. Rookie.
That's not a newbie thing. It's quarantine 2020, and we're
I was gonna say it's a quarantine at home with everybody else on Zoom.
I know. My husband's on a doctor's appointment right now. My son's at school. Okay. So do we want to try again?
Yeah, let's try it again.
Okay.
So.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Simple Conversations where Grace meets Strength. Hey Alice.
Good morning.
How are ya?
I am so good. I'm super excited about our guest today.
I am too. Super excited to meet her and to learn from her. And so listeners, today is it's December. It's December 8th, 2020. We're still in 2020.
Take a deep breath. It's almost over.
I know, right?
I really do believe that there's magic that's going to happen when we cross over the threshold at midnight on December.
You do?
I do. I really just do.
Listen, I'll jump in your wagon.
Magic dust fall from heaven, and it's all going to be better.
Yes. Okay. I agree with you.
Okay.
That's funny. So, yes, today is December 8th, 2020, and we are super excited to be back here with another wonderful, amazing, courageous woman in our Amazing Courageous Women series.
Yes, I am super excited to introduce you guys to my friend Rachel Richmond. I had to think, Rachel and I actually have been friends for a really long time. If I had to guess, I would say probably close to 12 years, I'm thinking.
Wow.
Yeah. So our paths crossed because someone introduced us because she was a military spouse looking to get connected. If I remember correctly, it's been so long, looking for, all of the connecting, supporting elements that come along with being a military spouse. Like, we totally have to have that connection, or it's kind of, it's not a regular lifestyle. Like, you have to learn how to navigate it. And so our paths crossed there, and then we went to church together, and then we have walked together and exercised together and done parties together. And oh my gosh, yeah. So I found out Rachel had a new venture, and so I wanted to talk to her today because this is something that I don't really know a lot about either. And so let's go ahead and welcome Rachel Richmond. So good morning.
Good morning, ladies.
Welcome to Simple Conversations.
Well, thank you for having me. It's kind of took me aback when you said, I really want you to come on here. So it means a lot that you noticed me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that. We're excited that you're here. We're honored that you would spend time with us.
Yes.
So let's jump in, and first, go ahead and tell us about Rachel.
Well, Rachel is a difference maker, and that's kind of been all of my life, has been my kind of go-to saying, be a difference maker. And the last few years, I've really put my focus to making a difference in lives of people struggling with mental health. And that's how I became an advocate for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And like we said, we titled this podcast Amazing and Courageous Women. it takes a lot of courage to step out into some of the places that we are activists in, because those are some dark places, and it's hard to step away and go back into your real life. And so we'll talk about those things in just a few minutes.
So, Rachel, why did you get started with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention? Like, why that particular entity?
Well, I'm going to try to tell my story a little bit without crying, guys, because it's a rough one. But first off, I struggle with mental illness. I've had depression and anxiety all of my life. And I look at my family I'm surrounded by people who are also struggling. There were two events that happened that really pushed me in this direction. I lost a military sister to a death by suicide. And then there was a little boy that was very important in my life who was struggling as well, who is a survivor of suicide. So those were the things that really pushed me in this direction to speak up and tell my story and tell others that it's okay to not be okay, and to have, these feelings and these thoughts, and it's normal. Obviously this all happened before quarantine, and now quarantine's happening, and people need to hear that more, I think.
Yeah, we both agree with that. We have had lengthy conversations between KJ and myself about mental illness and how it's perceived. Mostly we talk about how that is perceived negatively in the church.
Yes.
And we totally want to do a podcast about that. But thank you for that, because it is a reality that people live with, and it doesn't make you a weak person. Like, you can't just shake it off. I too struggle with anxiety. KJ and I talked about this earlier in one of our podcasts on, trying to remember the name. It was Quarantine Blues, where we talked about that. And Alyssa, my daughter, came on and talked about that too. And she also struggles. And so more so than I do. So even understanding it from her lens and seeing it. So as a caretaker, as a mom, witnessing that and trying to normalize it as much as possible and watch the struggle. So yeah, I hear you. It's tough.
So what keeps you motivated, Rachel, to continue working for, or just being an activist for mental health and suicide prevention?
I think just knowing if I touch one person and
Yes.
help one person, even that's made a difference. We can't save everybody, unfortunately. And that's the hard fact of this. So just knowing that I've helped one person and given the word out, that there is different people who care, and maybe it's not your immediate family, maybe it's not your church, maybe it's not your friends that are around you, because maybe they don't see exactly what your struggle is. But even that person on the other end of the phone at our suicide prevention lifeline, which AFSP partners with, that somebody cares, somebody out there cares.
Yeah.
And you might not know that person exists without somebody like me saying, hey, we do exist and we do care.
So what is your role? What you're a volunteer?
I am a volunteer. I'm not a medical professional. I'm definitely not a therapist. I have no certifications. Volunteer 100% for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I was asked this year to take over, in the middle of this pandemic, to take over the Virginia Beach chapter of the Out of the Darkness experience. What that is that's a walk that we put on every year to help raise awareness and raise funds to help support the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So can you give us some statistics? Like,
I could give you statistics. However, unfortunately, our statistics are from 2018.
Okay.
So the most up-to-date statistics are way behind. And that's something that we're working on, trying to figure out ways to change those statistics. In 2018, we saw a decrease in those numbers, which is awesome. However, we're now in a pandemic, and we're all afraid that those numbers are going to increase again. Which is why we're out here telling people we exist.
Yes.
And telling people that there is help out there, and people do care. But it's hard because statistics, those numbers have to come from somewhere, right?
Yes.
So that comes from your counties reporting to the cities, and the cities reporting to the states, and the states reporting to national, and that takes 2 years before we get actual numbers.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really shouldn't take that long. Like, we live in a computer age where those things are just a click of a button to add to a database somewhere. Like, that's crazy to me that it takes so long. And no wonder that we're so far behind the curve of prevention and awareness, because that's craziness. Alyssa wrote a paper for college, one of her classes. I just proofed it last night, and it was called "We Failed Them." And her paper was just about the Vietnam War, and how so many of the veterans coming out of the Vietnam War struggled with PTSD, and PTSD wasn't even diagnosed as a thing until like 5 years after everybody had, well, I can't say everybody had come home, until 5 years after the war had ended.
Right.
I'll say that. And but the number of veterans that are still homeless, still on the streets, and still commit suicide is higher than the regular population. Am I right in saying that?
Death by suicide, absolutely, in the military community is a lot higher. My loss was a military person, so that's one of the things that's very important to me, is trying to find out why, and that's why AFSP is important, in that their goals are research and finding research and helping fund research to find out the why, so that we can help prevent in the future. What they're finding is that, it's a brain condition. It's not, I just had a bad day and I can't do this anymore. It's a brain condition. And so with military members, especially, the traumatic brain injury numbers are going up. And so that's also giving you an effect, a cause and effect, right? I think knowing the research and knowing why is important, so that we can find, maybe it's a new helmet. And we see that with the sports. They've changed their helmet guidelines for football because brain injuries were a thing, and they've done a lot of studies on that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So I still want to go back to the statistics. I really don't want to just skate over that because I do think that, like what you said, even though the numbers are from 2018, I think that is, like, we don't have numbers for 2020 yet. And so obviously the numbers for 2019 aren't out yet, because there's, whatever the case may be. Right. And so, and I don't really understand how they, like what you were saying, the counties have to document the numbers, and then the states have to put them together, and then then somebody, whoever that is, combines those numbers. So, but when I went to the website for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, it said in 2018 that 48,344 Americans died by suicide. Is that the same number you have?
Yes.
And that suicide was the 10th leading cause of death in the United States in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a number that's more, I mean, it's a huge number, right? So it's more than things like war, death by war right now, I mean, the idea that number is so big, and that's actually a year that we had a number that was smaller.
Wow.
Than previous years.
Astounding. Yeah. Also, part of the statistics that was very interesting to me is that middle-aged white men are 3.56 times more often than women are the ones committing suicide. So I have someone close to me that I love very much who is a retired first responder. And so when you look at those numbers, in 2018, 243 of that 48,000 were first responders. You know, regardless, one is too many.
Right.
But yeah, one is too many. We wonder, has that person, fallen through the cracks? Do they not have a support system? What, are they not seeking medical attention? Is it, there's just so many questions like around that number, because like what you said, 48,300.
I think we lost her.
We'll give her a minute to come back, and then we'll start that part over, and Tim can cut this out. Just breathe. It's okay. Tim can cut that out.
Are we back?
We are. Okay, so go back to talking about your first responder, and Tim can edit. We'll pause for a second. You go back to that question, and then he can edit that stuff out.
Go back to what, is Rachel with us?
She is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't remember what, yeah.
So you were talking about first responders.
Did I give us the number?
Go back to that and start there.
Okay. So in 2018, there were 48,300.
Hold 1 second. I'm sorry. Let's pause for a second. That way he can cut easily. So Let's just pause for a second.
In 2018, there were 48,344 Americans that died by suicide. It was the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. Middle-aged white men were 3.5 times more often than women died by suicide. And out of the 48,344 Americans that died by suicide in 2018, 243 of those were first responders. I have someone close to me that is a first responder that is challenged by mental health issues, PTSD, anxiety, clinical depression. And so all of those numbers are just astounding to me. So the statistics don't lie. The facts are there. What's even more sad to me is that Rachel stated that in 2018, that was a low number.
Right.
Yeah. And now we know with the pandemic, I mean, people are suffering even more.
Right.
And so, in 2 years, when we get the numbers from 2020, it's probably going to be more than 48,344. And that is a huge, large number that just hurts my heart.
It does mine too. And such an unnecessary number.
Yes. Unnecessary. So, and those are my questions. Like, are people falling through the cracks? Are they not seeking medical attention? Do they not have a support system?
I think there's a stigma. Rachel, you can answer this better, but I think there's still a stigma attached to, I can have a broken arm and that's okay, but I can't have broken emotions. I can't have I can't struggle with anxiety and depression. And then I think, okay, when you do, okay, I don't think we feel that way 100% of the time. We have up moments and we have moments that are good and positive. And so when people see us like that, it's almost like I just saw you yesterday, and yesterday you were fine, so you should be able to just shake it off. It doesn't work that way. You can't just shake it off. And it takes so much courage and vulnerability to ask for help that way, more so than, again, if you had a cold or had the flu. Like if I felt like I had the flu, going to the doctor is like, okay, it's no big deal. Everybody gets the flu, right? But there's such I just don't think you're right that we raise enough awareness, that enough people have come out and said, hey, me too, right? I struggle too. I take medication. Hello, I'll be the first to say I take medication. I had a season where we had I'll say it was probably situational anxiety brought on, I guess, if that's a thing. And I cried every single day for months, and I'm not a crier at all. At all. And finally, I knew that I was at a breaking point, and I couldn't continue to do that anymore because it was so exhausting to put my, I'll say, happy face on, to go out and have to see people and not let them in on what was really going on with me. And that was exhausting, and I couldn't do that anymore. And then the flip side of that is I didn't want to be on medication that made me not feel, because I wanted to feel. I just didn't want to be stuck on the negative end of the pendulum, right? And so I think that there's just a stigma that, okay, and even then, once you take medication alone isn't the answer. You have to do medication, and you have to go see somebody. You have to get tools for how to deal with what you're dealing with. It's not a cookie cutter thing.
Right. I think the stigma exists, especially for men, because they're supposed to be the strong one. They're supposed to be taking care of us and their families, and I think that's a stigma that we have to start changing from childhood.
I agree.
And that's for women too. I think not just men. I think we need to tell them that it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to have a bad day. You know, you can take and have a camping trip there for a day or two, but you can't build your house there.
Right.
And that's something that I try to encourage people all the time. Don't stay in that emotion. Find some coping skill, a mechanism to help you get out of that place. For me, the last year, I've been painting rocks and putting those rocks out in the world so that other people could find them and give them a little ray of sunshine, you know. But for some people, that's medication. For some people, that's exercise or diet change. Some people, you know, it's going and seeing a therapist or having that person that you can confide in and talk to. All of those things help you cope. The stigmatism of we just have to hold up, everybody else, you know, looks at us this way, and we have to hold ourselves to the way that they see us, needs to change. That it's okay to have bad days. So.
Yeah, one of the ladies that I have listened to in the past taught me a saying of sitting in your feelings, to understand them, and that it was okay to sit in them, because sometimes we even want to like push it away, like it's not really there, like I don't really deal with it, which makes it so much worse, because then we're not addressing the problem.
Right.
And then it will tend to snowball. So I agree with you 100%, and say that as well. You can sit there, you can't live there.
Right.
You need to sit there, you need to feel it, but then you need to
And I think with our first responders, that number is changing, in that we're changing policies. You know, they've always had to, after a rough call, sit down and have a conversation and debrief. Those debriefs are now including mental health, and making sure that, you know, they really truly are not just saying, okay, this happened, let's go on, that we're going to the next thing, but really taking some time and saying, oh, that really sucked. And it's okay to say it sucked, but, you know, making sure that mentally we're in the right place to continue.
Yeah.
So what advice, Rachel, would you have for someone if they were listening right now and they needed some hope?
Hope. That's our word this year, by the way. Everything is about hope this year. I think just knowing that even in the darkest moment, there's some light out there. Somebody cares. Somebody's there. And just being able to say, hey, I'm not okay, and somebody hear you. It happens, right? So that's why we have the crisis text line. That's why we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, so that there are people out there who are there to listen and help, and maybe connect you with those things that, those counselors or a doctor, or even just another advocate who knows and understands what you're going through.
Yeah, and for our listeners, we will include all of those links, phone numbers, websites, all of that will be included in our show notes. So you'll be able to see them, and we'll include them when we're advertising this podcast as well. So you can go back to any of our social media pages to find them, and they'll all be there.
That's good.
Yeah.
So Rachel, where do you see yourself with volunteering with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in 5 years? Do you feel like you'll still be doing this in 5 years?
Absolutely. The key to that is self-care, making sure that I realize that I can't save everybody despite wanting to, and taking some time to self-care. But yeah, in 5 years, I definitely see myself running, if not running the walk here in Virginia Beach, still doing something on a bigger statewide level. I definitely want that. I don't see myself walking away. This is a national organization. We have walks all over the United States. We have walks that they organize in the military, on the ships and on the deployments and stuff. So I see the impact of what I'm doing in a long term.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's good.
So our podcast that we're recording right now will release in January. So tell us what your organization has planned for early 2021 and how people can get involved.
Okay. Early 2021 is when I usually, start getting my volunteers, gathering volunteers who are interested in being a part of our walks. We have campus walks that happen in the college campuses across the United States, as well as those happen in the spring, and then in the fall is all of our community walks.
Okay.
So for us here in Virginia Beach, our walk is set for September. So I'll be working on getting fundraisers organized and getting our volunteers set up so that we can have a successful year.
So if you wanted to volunteer, if our listeners wanted to volunteer, what ways can they volunteer?
Absolutely. The best way to get in touch and sign up to volunteer is on our website, which is afsp.org. And then you go all the way to the bottom of the page, and there's a little tab that says volunteer. And you fill out the volunteer paperwork, and that gets sent to me. And then I reach out and find out, where your best fit is going to be. We have things that happen advocacy wise. That's really easy to sign up and volunteer for. Basically, you tell us where you live and sign up to receive emails. They'll send you an email about things that are going on in the advocacy department, where all you have to do is sign your name to it, and then it emails to your representatives in your area, asking for change in our government policies. Those kind of things have helped bring about the 988 number, which is going to launch probably in the next 2 years. But it's just like 411 or any of those phone numbers. It's a 3-digit 988 that you'll be able to dial into your phone, where you'll be able to get resources.
That's
okay.
awesome.
I want to ask about that. So I know that when people with mental health or family members of people with mental illness have called 911, that does not always end well.
Right.
Now, I'm not, I won't go into all of the political stuff of all of that. I won't do that. But we can't expect our first responders to be prepared for every situation. They're not equipped to do that. I don't think that's fair to anybody. So would this number be similar to that? Do you know, so that they would get first responder help, but more for a mental situation than a violent one, so to speak?
I think it's going to be similar to our Lifeline number.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure. I know we're working on training with our first responders so that they have a little more understanding of how to handle a situation. You know, they go into it with their first responder hat on,
Right.
And they're not therapists, and they're not
Right.
you know, trained to deal with that. So we're trying to get them more training so that they can respond in a better way.
Yeah, it's a lot to carry. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, that's really good. I had not heard that before. That's new to me. That's exciting to me, actually, that we would be working towards that. I hate that it takes so long to put these things in place. But
Yeah.
I love that there are those motions. Okay. So what else? Oh, so tell me, other than the walk, and you told me that, and how you can volunteer, you told us that. How can you support? So if our listeners want to support, donate, fund, sponsor an event, what would that look like?
Absolutely. For here in Virginia Beach, if you're looking to be involved, you can go to that afsp.org/VA Beach, and it'll pull you up to our local donation page. That donation page usually starts like the middle of February, just because we take the month of January to take everything from the prior year and get us organized for the new year.
Right.
Once that goes live, you can make donations. You can sign up a team to come out and walk. You don't have to be a team. You can do it individually.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to be a sponsor, there's a way through that page also. Further down the page, it just says to learn more about becoming a sponsor. Our sponsorship packages are very reasonable. They usually start around $250 to be a sponsor, and that gets you all kinds of benefits.
That's really cool. Really cool. Good to know. Okay. So I think the last question I have for our interview before we get to our rapid fire, which is the light part of a heavy interview, is, so before you became a volunteer in a staff position, how long have you been involved with AFSP?
Oh goodness. Probably officially on paper the last 3 years.
Okay.
Unofficially, because that's a stigma, right?
Yeah.
Unofficially, it's been a lot more. I have been part of the walk pretty much since I started. It started here in 2008, and I probably started around the same time. But I never understood the importance of registering, and never understood the importance of gathering donations. Those donations fund our different aspects of research and the education that we're putting out, those kind of things that I didn't understand when I first, became interested in being involved.
So you would
it wasn't until
walk.
I would just show up and walk.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people do that because there's that stigma of, oh, my name's going to be on a piece of paper somewhere that says I did this thing for suicide. And so learning the importance of registering and giving yourself a voice and being counted was something that was really important to me to learn, I guess. And that probably happened in 2017 or 18 for me. That somebody said, hey, this is why you register. And you register so that we can send you information, so that we can send your politicians in your area this number that says, hey, these people care about this. This is something that we need to work on.
So good. I'm so proud of you and excited about the work that you're doing, for sure, and the work that that your organization is doing.
Well, thank you.
A difference maker.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
All right. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you want the audience to know?
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, that I'm definitely looking for volunteers and for support financially from sponsors into the coming year. Obviously, this year with a pandemic, we definitely struggled in our sponsorship, which means that we have less money to do things with, which means we have less money for, educational materials that I can hand out to people.
Right.
And so we've got to bring that donations back next year.
Yeah, that's
I think it's important to say that every listener that is listening to this podcast knows somebody who has struggled with some sort of mental illness. Okay. And even though the stigma around suicidal ideations, suicidal tendencies, suicidal deaths, even though that's not something that we talk about at our kitchen table, just think about the people in your circle that that have issues with anxiety, that you believe may be suffering or be challenged by depression or PTSD. And just think that if that one person has had suicidal ideations or tendencies or has tried it, you may not know that. But because
Absolutely.
you know that person that has struggled with mental illness or whatever the case may be, that is a reason for you to get involved. That one person.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For every one person, I would say that there's probably 3 or 4 that you didn't know about.
That's right.
And that comes from the stigma. We don't talk about it, until recently. Those who attempted and who are survivors really didn't speak up. And we're finding now that we've got some really strong people who have spoken up and said, hey, I attempted and I'm a survivor. And now more and more people are coming out, and you'd be surprised with that number. I think figuring out a way to sit down at the dinner table and have that conversation with your family and say, hey, this is a thing. Have you felt that way? And know that if you specifically ask somebody, are you thinking about suicide? Doesn't make them want to perform the act of suicide. It's not going to entice them to have an action, right? It's going to open their eyes that, oh gosh, somebody actually saw me and saw that I'm hurting.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Great
It's
advice.
like having the sex talk doesn't make your kid go have sex.
Exactly.
Teaches them what to do in the event of situations in their life happening and how to prevent things from happening, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes, just like what Rachel said, sometimes just knowing that someone cares, they see that you're hurting and that you care and that you're willing to open the door for the conversation and help them.
Yeah.
Especially our kids, the younger generation is definitely struggling with this. And if we at least teach our kids that, talking about it, asking their friends, hey, are you okay? Do you need help?
Yeah.
Is there something that we could do to take these thoughts and be productive with them? I think that's important too, just knowing that you've taught your kid how to look after their friends.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're not in a safe home environment, or, there's something that they're struggling with, and just knowing that your kid can talk to their friends and say, hey, I see you.
Yeah. That's powerful.
That's good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Are you ready?
No.
Okay. Our rapid fire questions, which we totally borrowed and gleaned from Brene Brown, because, she's one of my favorites and she asks great questions. So, when you need to be brave, but you feel fear, what do you do?
I turn on the song Fight Song.
That's good.
Yeah. That's so.
And I listened to that this morning before I got on here with you guys. So it works.
That's good. So find your thing that works and use it. That's so good. Okay. What's on your nightstand right now?
Ooh. You're going to laugh, but it is a plant.
Okay.
It's a succulent, and it's called a donkey tail. And it was something that my grandmother had grown, and I asked some fellow advocates to bless me with that, and they did. And so it's in this cute little cow vase, and I love it. But that's it.
Okay. And then our last one is, what's a snapshot of an ordinary moment in your life that brings you great joy?
My dog Birdie. Yeah. He's definitely been my lifesaver more than once. I struggle with depression and anxiety, and he's always happy to see me and wants love, and you wouldn't know it right now. He's fast asleep over there in the corner, but yeah, my dog.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Is he a registered emotional support animal?
He is not. Everybody asks me that he would be a great one, but I just haven't done the time to do the paperwork and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, he doesn't have to be registered. He's still your emotional support animal.
Without a doubt. He travels with me. He does a lot of things with me.
Yeah, that's so good. That's good.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, so we're animal lovers too. So KJ has chickens like I do. And
I want chickens so bad.
Yeah, they just that brings joy. That little bit of something brings joy to your day. And I think that having something to take care of, helps too, because then you
Absolutely
have something that you're responsible for. So yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, there was definitely days I wouldn't have got out of bed had I not had my dog that I had to take care of.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Listeners, we will, again, add all of Rachel's contact information and her organization in our show notes, and we would love for you to reach out and let us know that. Let us know that you're reaching out to be a volunteer, or to walk, or to organize, or to help raise awareness where you are, and that this mattered, because we know that it matters.
Absolutely.
That it matters where you are too. So thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
ladies.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, y'all. Simple conversations where grace meets strength.